All right, guys, welcome back. This is Faye,
And this is Nick.
and this is
Creogs over coffee.
Today, we're very excited to have with us Dr. Erin Caughey from OHSU. So Dr. Caughey is a professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the School of Medicine and also the Associate Dean of Women's Health Research and Policy at OHSU. So welcome, Dr. Caughey.
Okay, so Dr. Caughey, we're here in Vegas at SMFM's annual meeting, and as we meet with everybody, we want to ask, what have you been most excited about for this meeting?
So I will say the SMFM was really the meeting that brought me into academic medicine. I was brought here, not to Vegas, but to my first SMFM in, I think, 1998 by a guy named Tom Shipp, who I was doing my resident research project with. I was working on a VBAC database with Dr. Shipp, and he said, we got to get you an abstract. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, we'll piece together a question and we'll submit it. And so, back in those days, we typed it out and print, like a typewriter, and pasted it in a little form and submitted it. And I came to this meeting and it just opened my eyes to the questions we could ask and answer in obstetrics and really what doing kind of clinical research and translational research meant. And so for me, the thing I get most excited about this meeting is bringing along the next generation of my mentees and trainees, my medical students, my residents, my fellows, and bringing them to this meeting and having them have that experience of seeing what it can be like, of meeting the leaders in our field. We were lucky enough this year that one of my medical students, Alyssa Hirsch, got to present an oral presentation yesterday on cost effectiveness of elective induction of labor. And after her talk, she got to spend 10 minutes with Bill Grobman, the lead author on the ARRIVE trial. And so for one of my medical students to get to spend time with someone of Dr. Grobman's stature is really exciting for me.
Dr. Caughey, most of our listeners are going to be medical students and residents and fellows. Is there any advice that you would give to them?
I think the first choice as a medical student is trying to figure out what you want to do in terms of a profession. Do you want to do, a specialty? Do you want to do internal medicine or surgery or whatnot? And I think it's tricky because I think we talked earlier, Faye, about whether or not I thought about the medical students that we have going into OBGYN at our institution. And I'm always a little bit nervous that as our numbers go up, that we're somehow selling ourselves as a more attractive profession. I'm not really interested in selling anyone on going into OBGYN. In fact, I say to students, if you could do anything else, you should do that because we're the toughest profession. We work the hardest. Our work-life balance is sometimes the most challenging. Babies are never going to be all scheduled to come during the day. Even if everybody's an elective induction, those are still going to deliver at night many times. And so that is a challenging thing about the field. And so don't let yourself be sold. Find what feels like where you belong. And it could be the people that you most want to be like, and it could be just that the things you're doing. And obstetrics and gynecology has a beautiful balance between medicine and surgery. And obstetrics, which is neither of those things. It really is a strange blend of the two. And so I think it just ends up calling to some people. So I would think that's first and foremost, is to really find what you want to do. And then within that, there's so many opportunities within whatever medical field you choose in terms of academics where you're doing research or focused on medical education or administration, and many opportunities for administrative work and leadership outside of academic medicine, in clinical medicine or community medicine. So there's really a lot of paths to identify and then follow, and kind of follow what you believe your strengths are and what you enjoy.
So, Dr. Caughey, you've certainly done quite a bit within our field, and I was just wondering, what do you feel like is the most important contribution you've made to our field?
Honestly, if I reflect on my contributions to our field, it really reflects in my first answer to your first question, which is what am I most excited about at this meeting? My biggest contributions is identifying talented young people and bringing them along into the field. When I look about the country, I think of the medical students that are now residents around the country training. You both know Jen Emerson. She was one of our medical students at OHSU. And again, it's not like Jen Emerson doesn't exist without me, but don't get me wrong. but the honor of being able to interact with someone like that and nudge them along to consider training outside of Oregon, for example, was important. I think of some of my very first medical students, 15 years ago, like Sarah Little, who's now at an attending maternal fetal medicine position at the Brigham. Um, Anjali Kaimal, who was one of my fellows, who's now the division head at Massachusetts General Hospital. That's I think really what my biggest contributions are in the field is identifying and nurturing young, talented individuals and allowing them to soar.
Dr. Coy, what do you do either at work or outside of work to keep yourself grounded? Because this is something that I'm interested in as well. Because we go and we see yourself, Dr. Groman, Dr. Janfi, your CVs are like 500 pages long, and Nick and I at least feel like, how are we ever going to get there unless we all sleep 2 hours a night and like continue working and put off having children and never get married?
Well, I do think having children earlier is better. I will say that actually. That's not something I would ever recommend putting off, honestly. I was talking with my co-administrative chief when I was at the Brigham was a woman named Caughey Economy, and she's here at the meeting with us. And Kathy's kind of an uber clinician educator. She's just probably one of the most inspiring, brilliant clinicians around at the Brigham, and has inspired countless medical students and residents and fellows over the years. And we were talking about when we were, in the 90s, when we were in training, the word wellness wasn't really a word that we ever used or talked about. However, we did a number of things in that environment where we worked 120 to 140-hour weeks to maintain sanity. One of the things that I did before medicine was I was in the performing arts, so opera, musical theater, that sort of thing. And so all through medical school, I continued to work professionally and semi-professionally in the performing arts in Boston. And when I started residency, I was like, well, okay, now I'm gonna have to really give it up. Like, there's no more performing. But even in residency, I was able to sing with the Back Bay Chorale. I did an opera. I can't remember exactly how I was able to squeeze that in. And so part of it was maintaining that. And throughout my time in San Francisco, I was able to sing with the San Francisco Symphony Chorale, with the San Francisco Symphony Opera Symphony for 7 years. And I was thinking about it, Faye, because I remember having a really bad cold one year when I was doing Beethoven's 9 and going through like a whole tube of these cough drops, and just so I wouldn't cough on, during the performance, and just like popping one in, and then like, coughing during like the big moment during when the 9 chorus comes in. So that was always a big part of my life, was singing and performing. And rehearsing is actually the thing I enjoy more than performing, but rehearsing. I will say in my current job, I don't have the time to do that anymore, to really perform. But I was reflecting on this the other day. I was in New York speaking at the New York OB Society. And I was, basically going to give a 45-minute talk. And so what is that but a one-man show, right? So before I went over my script, reminded myself of the where I think the laugh lines are in that 45-minute one-man show. And so in a sense, I mean, this might sound weird, but one of the ways that keeps me kind of grounded and is actually giving lectures around the country and even locally where I am. And you think, well, isn't that part of your work? And I guess it is, but it's a different kind of work than, delivering babies, than doing research. The conveying of the work that we all do, and trying to get an audience to understand why it's important and how they might apply it in their day-to-day lives. So I think that's the thing, the performing arts. But of course, the thing that most keeps me grounded is my children. And so I'm someone who basically leaves the office every day by 5:30, and I'm home by 6 to cook dinner and to do homework and hang out with my kids. Essentially every day. We plan a lot of travel together. My kids are also into the theater, and so I take them to New York and we go to shows. We saw Hamilton a week after it opened, for example, 2.5 years ago. We saw the show Be More Chill off Broadway last summer. We're going to see it now that it's coming to Broadway. I mean, so that's really important to me is kind of my kids and spending time with them.
Do you have a favorite show or opera? Opera seems like it's been a theme amongst MFMs.
That's interesting. It's interesting. I like opera, and I did opera in college, but it doesn't sing to me the way that musical theater does. And so obviously most of your listeners will probably know the show Hamilton, which is a remarkable show. But actually, my 14-year-old son, Aiden, and I think that the show Dear Evan Hansen is a better musical. And the reason we believe that is the plot we think is more available to a younger audience in terms of what it means. And we also think the score is simply just one of the most beautiful scores ever written for a musical. So I've got to say Dear Evan Hansen's up there. Historically, my favorite show was Sweeney Todd, which is just, one of, Stephen Sondheim's masterpiece and is just an amazing show. But in my heart, over the last 5 years, Dear Evan Hansen has really taken that occupied that role for me.
Do you have a favorite performance of Sweeney Todd? Because I've seen quite a few renditions of it.
I mean, I think the original one with Len Cariou and Angela Lansbury is the timeless classic one. I was lucky enough to see the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra the year before I joined, actually, do it with Patti LuPone, which was amazing. And then the following year, when I was singing, I got to do Candide with Patti LuPone and with Rita Moreno, which was kind of an amazing experience. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, Dr. Coyne, recording with us. It's great to have you on our show, and we hope that you have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. My pleasure. And it was also, giving up the time of your Quilligan Scholar time to do this, Faye. A very generous donation of your time as well.
So once again, this is Nick.
This is Faye, and this is Creogs Over Coffee. If you enjoy our podcast, go ahead and go on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or any of your other podcatchers and give us a 5-star rating and review.
You can find us online at creogsovercoffee.com, or you can find us on Facebook at Creogs Over Coffee or on Twitter at CreogsOverCoffee1.
If you want to give us some support in exchange for a shout out on the podcast or some cool swag, you can find us on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/CreogsOverCoffee.
Have any ideas for the show, things you want to hear, or corrections to a previous show? Email us at creogsovercoffee@gmail.com.